Hello everyone, MacFrog here. Today we're going to look at 14 of the ArmyPainter speed paints and how they fare in place of the more frequently referenced Citadel contrast paint range in the SlapChop painting method. SlapChop can potentially speed up the process and get models onto the table quickly and looking good, so it's one that I want to keep exploring. To briefly recap the method, we start with a zenithal spray of black as a base coat and a mid-tone gray sprayed down from the top. Once it's dry, we're going to dry brush with a bright white. This time, I'm going to go very heavy with the dry brushing as I want to emphasize the SlapChop effect for this video. I'm going to do my best to get time codes into the video itself, but at the very least, I'll leave them in the comments below in case you want to see a specific color. We'll start with the application so you can see how each speed paint applies, and then I will go through each color individually with the dried finished product. Now that they're all dry, let's look at each color individually. First is Blood Red here, and this dragon really shows off this effect well. Those heavily dry brushed edges are really catching the color, so they're showing through much brighter than the darker internals. Same with Camo Cloak. I really wasn't expecting this one to do well, but it turned out to be one of my favorites. It's a very dark green, but the edges showed up at almost a mint green. Very cool. For Fire Giant Orange, that is much darker than you might imagine. So some of the darker colors for the contrast didn't do well, but in this case, the Fire Giant Orange really catches those the edges well. For Highlord Blue, again, these speed paints are really performing well, leaving the edges very, very bright on the white and very, very dark in the recesses. For Hive Dweller Purple, this one was probably the hardest to see the effect in, but I think if you use some of the contrast medium or the speed paint medium that are included with these sets, you could thin down this purple considerably and get a better effect. Holy White was one that I think was performing the worst of the bunch here, and that it was really hard to see kind of really any difference. It just made it kind of look like a stone gray. Magic Blue was wonderful. It's one of my favorite speed paints to begin with, and then used for this process. It really did a good job of filling in the crevices, making those nice and dark, and then lightening up on the edges again. Malignant Green was a little bit more subtle. As far as speed paints go, it's kind of an interesting one to work with, but again, it did its job well. Orc Skin was great, nice bright green. So you can see here, this would be great. If you're doing Clan Jade Falcon, this would be a really easy way to paint up those mechs quickly. Pallid Bone, very subtle effect here on this Atlas, but really did a good job of showing that gradient from light to dark. Definitely happy with that Atlas. Plasmatic Bolt gives you that kind of jade look on top of a mech. Again, showing the shadows, the light and the dark, the transitions, the edges, pretty solid. It's a little bit more subtle than the other green. Purple Alchemy, very bright, very showy. It's one of my favorite speed paints. Sand Golem, a little bit darker than you might expect from the image on the bottle, but it almost comes off as a little bit more brown than sandy, but did a really good job of, again, hitting those light and dark spots on the catapult. And the Zealot Yellow, I think, is one of my favorites here on this Polygon Masterworks Bushwhacker. Really did an amazing job of hitting those high points, keeping a nice bright yellow and almost a dark black in the recesses. So all in all, I'm really impressed with how the speed paints did with this process. Much happier than I was with the Citadel contrasts that I used before. So I definitely recommend, if you want to really get into this process and you have the option, I might go with those speed paints rather than Citadel and kind of rolling your dice on those Citadel paints, because they're kind of hit and miss. As far as the speed paints go, I'm a big fan. There is that kind of reactivation issue that some people have run into with some of the paints. But if you've got an airbrush anyway and you're doing this process, you probably have some clear coat sitting around, so you can do a clear coat over the top and you'd be good to go. So with that, I'll say thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you have other colors you'd like me to try down the road, feel free to leave a comment under the video. All right, take care, be awesome, make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.